Welcome to Mental and Emotional Health 6, the automatic mind. We'll begin this video by revealing the truth about automatic thoughts and look particularly at how they voice our thinking habits and hide behind the scenes. Then we'll look at how to tame our automatic thoughts using an ACT approach known as diffusion, followed by an effective way to apply diffusion called thanking our mind. I'll make some clarifications, then we'll look at how to tame our automatic thoughts using evidence, and finally I'll end with an important side note.
Welcome to Step 2, Managing Our Automatic Mind. So we're learning to enjoy living in the moment with an attitude of kindness and thankfulness. When out of the blue, something grabs our attention. A message in the form of a mental picture, a sentence, or just a vague impression. Why am I wasting my time on this? It's not going to make any difference. Or something random like, my hair is awesome, so much better than his. Or something more shocking, like a mental image of us pushing over the stranger walking past us on the street. When we get these messages, it's easy to get bothered. But the good news is, we can take all that noise as comfort that our mind is working just like everybody else's on the planet. These are just automatic thoughts, completely normal and nothing to be afraid of. But if we don't really understand this, our automatic thoughts can create all sorts of problems, particularly when they give a voice to our unhealthy thinking habits. For example, I'm going about my business when suddenly I hear, "Oh no, Dave, you're about to spiral into sadness." And because I've validated this thought so many times by either fighting it or fleeing, it carries with it a feeling of dread and panic, which creates the illusion that the thought is much more important than it really is. Even more of a problem is when we fail to see our automatic thoughts for what they really are. The more we rehearse them, the more they blend into the background of our experience, until we can't tell the difference between our thoughts and our identity. In fact, they can seem so much a part of who we are, so much a normal part of reality, that we don't see them at all. And yet, our lack of awareness doesn't take away the cost of our toxic automatic thoughts running free. So, what can we do? Well, first, we have to start paying attention to any automatic thoughts racing through our mind or hiding away in the background of our awareness. Catching out our toxic thoughts can be a real challenge to begin with, but over time, with practice, they become clearer and we get better at spotting them quickly, which means we can take positive action in the moment. And the good news is that in most cases, we need only one simple approach when dealing with unhelpful automatic thoughts. Whether the thought is subtle or obvious, we simply notice it, recognize that it's just a thought, and then we gently bring our attention back to whatever's going on in the moment. And when we do this consistently, again and again, we get to enjoy minds that are calmer and lives that are simpler and more engaged in what really matters. Now, as effective as this can be, there will be times when our automatic mind is so convincing that we get bluffed into arguing or fighting or trying to suppress the thoughts altogether. But of course, these things always work against us. So I'd love to suggest this simple technique from acceptance and commitment therapy, which is great for untangling us from our troubling automatic thoughts. When we notice ourselves entertaining them, we can simply thank our mind for trying to help and then move on by shifting our attention. For example, I'm not coping with these terrible feelings. Thanks, mind. I need to distract myself with cake. Thanks, mind. I still feel awful. I need to find a new strategy to fix the problem. Thanks, mind. Thanking our mind is a kind and non-judgmental way of acknowledging that our unpleasant thought is simply that, a thought, and we can safely leave it be and get back to whatever we were doing. Now, I want to pause here to reiterate a couple of things. Notice that we're not resisting our thoughts in any way. Getting into a war with our thoughts only makes them stronger and more persistent. And notice that we're not avoiding them. Avoiding or suppressing our troubling thoughts just validates their message and reinforces our belief that they are real, bad, and dangerous. As you know, distraction or avoidance also sets our automatic thoughts free to roam about in the background of our mind. And this just makes us miserable and grows our thinking habits. So we're not fighting or ignoring our automatic thoughts, but we're diffusing them by taking a moment to notice them and acknowledge that they're just thoughts and nothing more, before bringing our attention back to the present. Diffusion is awesome because it teaches us that our automatic thoughts are not facts or truth or twisted parts of our personality, but simply thoughts, electrical signals passing through our brain. This strips them of their power to worry us, it reduces their frequency, and ultimately it leads us to become comfortable with the workings of our own mind. But what happens when our thinking habits are so well ingrained that we get totally hooked by their story? When we believe our thoughts wholeheartedly and diffusion doesn't seem to help? Well, then it's time to look at the evidence using a classic CBT technique. Let's begin with a shorthand version that we can use quickly in the moment. Say a work colleague looks in my direction with an annoyed look on her face, which triggers a thinking habit that's anchored to a belief that people don't like me and I always make stupid mistakes. I resist the urge to fight or flee, thank my mind for the automatic commentary, and I try to get back to work. But the automatic thoughts and feelings don't give up, and I'm finding it hard to concentrate. So in my mind, I start reviewing the evidence. Is there any evidence that I made a mistake or that my colleague doesn't like me? Well, she seemed to look at me in a grumpy way, and I have made mistakes before. And what about evidence of the opposite, that I didn't make a mistake and she does like me? Well, she could have just been looking in my direction. She didn't actually tell me that I made a mistake, and I guess she could be annoyed for a totally different reason. Or maybe she was just concentrating and not annoyed at all. And so a quick review of the evidence can work wonders at disentangling us from our fearful thoughts so that we can get back to living in the present. But what happens if a quick review isn't enough to get us back on track? Or if there isn't time to look at the evidence there and then? Well, then we can use a longhand version of the same technique when it suits. Pause the video now to see how it works. In this example, Amelia addresses her seaweed issue. Here's another example, using my fear of difficult emotions. This is a really powerful tool. And in fact, if you want to speed up the rewiring of your brain, I'd encourage you to take 15 minutes a day for the next couple of weeks to complete one of these for your chosen thinking habit. In the description, you'll find a link to a more detailed thought record template, but I find the one that I've shown just now to be ideal, and I just pop mine into my phone for convenience. Now, a brief side note before we finish. Sometimes we have automatic thoughts that are helpful. Wow, that coffee is awesome. Don't forget to send that email today. That person looks like they might be in trouble. We should help. We are in charge of our own decisions, and sometimes it's right to take on board what our automatic mind is saying. But we're also responsible for making sure that we only entertain thoughts that are helpful, that we return to the present, and that we don't get caught up in inner conversations that aren't good for us. So there we are, that's step 2, recognizing our automatic thoughts for what they are, and then simply and gently bringing our attention back to the present. And if we find ourselves believing our thoughts as truth or getting drawn into mental conversations, we can use the tools from CBT and ACT to help us move on again. Now, I can't overstate how important the next video is. We're going to dive into the exciting world of our feelings.